first of all, Drew, good to see you, man. And I really want this conversation to be really informal. I want to talk about mental health. I want to talk about your experiences. I want to talk about what it's like to be a baseball player and have demons. But more critically, what it's like to be a human being and trying to be good at life and to have some demons. And so I thought we could just go wherever this conversation takes us. How does that sound to you?
Yeah, I love that idea. So let's do it.
Okay, cool. So one thing that I've been thinking a lot about is how in sports we prioritize physical health, and for good reason, right? Like if your body is moving well, if you're at your most athletic, and you're recovering well, it's likely that you're going to be, good between the lines or on the court or whatever it is that you do. But I don't know that we pay the same level of attention to mental health, and I wonder, as a player coming up and maybe even back in high school, if you could have used some assistance at any point, and maybe just talk about that a bit.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like one of those things that you always hear. Like I always heard it coming up and going through the system of the mental side of the game is just as important as the physical side of the game. But I just felt like it wasn't as maybe promoted as much, and it wasn't as talked about as openly as the physical side of things, and specifically to like the physical rehabilitation side of it, where you see like a huge team of people helping players go through the rehab process or just like the body maintenance. So it was always kind of up to you to find what your resources would be. So it would be like whatever you would want out of the mental side of the game. It was kind of up to you. And I was always overwhelmed by that because I basically didn't know where to start. So it was something that just naturally I didn't pay much attention to because I just I just put everything into like the physical side of things because I just didn't really know where to start or where to go with the mental side of things. So it is interesting because it's like, I think I was also looking for some like world changing process, or like the quotes, or some like really high level person, where it's really a lot of other things. And it's like, I'm finding that it's all these little practices just throughout the day is the mental work. So it's like, I think I was just expecting way too much, and I just didn't know where to start. And that created like a little bit of an overwhelming feeling. So it was something that I just naturally just kind of didn't pay much attention to because, like I said, it wasn't as up in front, like right in front of my face, as the physical side of things were.
Yeah. So I actually want to dig into that a little bit. I think it's interesting. You walk into a major league clubhouse, and let's say you didn't sleep well, your neck is, particularly stiff that day for whatever reason, travel, sleep, whatever. First thing you do is you walk into this training room, walk through the clubhouse and into this training room. And this training room is kind of expansive. There's 5, 6, 7 tables set up, multiple medical professionals there with all sorts of modalities and, anti-inflammatories and treatment ideas on how to get you right for that night's game. So that gives you some guidance, right? You walk into that room, you approach your head athletic trainer and you say, hey, look, I didn't sleep very well. My neck is stiff. I want to be able to see a pitch out of the pitcher's hands today. So can we get this right? So it's really easy. You know exactly where to go and what to do. Can you envision a world where you wake up and you're like, I don't feel confident today. Actually, I'm having some really dark fucking thoughts and a little bit scared, and a room just like that, but for those things that you're experiencing in your brain, your emotional state, walking into that room and having that same level of treatment available at your fingertips. I mean, does that sound crazy? Is it something that we could work towards? What do you think?
I mean, for me, just with everything I've gone through and what I've like really dove into, I don't think that's crazy at all. I think that's like so needed. And it's something that we as an organization have with Shayna. I know I take advantage of the resources she provides all the time. And it's something, having that like on hand, on call at all times, it's so comforting because I believe in that work, and I trust in her, and I trust in that side of things. So it's like, I totally take advantage, and I do that. If I wake up and I kind of feel off, or I'm not able to really assess why I'm feeling that way, I feel so comfortable reaching out to her, and it's like I kind of been describing it at times in other conversations where it's at one point having a full team of physical athletic trainers and rehab, like that whole entire team wasn't normal. You always used to hear the phrase, "You don't make the club in the tub." So it's like at one point some team or somebody, some organization took the step forward and started bringing this full-time staff on board. So I like totally envision down the road where there'll be a full team in place, and like the department like that we're starting in every organization, because it's something that everybody knows will help, but it's just that like discomfort of something being new, which everything is uncomfortable at first, but it's something that, like I said, I used to be so closed off on that stuff where I kind of knew I needed help, but I viewed it as a weakness. So I just try to tough it out and whatnot. But now, like going through this and being open to this idea and knowing how much it helps, I don't see why it wouldn't be something where like everyone would be comfortable doing it, because it's the same thing. And it can hold you back the same way as a pulled hamstring or stiff neck would do, like we've talked about plenty of times. And I know you're super, super adamant about those things. And it's something that's like so refreshing, because we all have something that we're dealing with at any given time. So why not just bring the best out of yourself?
Yeah. So I want to dig into the mental toughness component of this, and like how you had mentioned, hey, I kind of felt like it was going to make me look or feel mentally weak. I think I've told a lot of people you're probably the toughest person that I know mentally. And so I really want to dig back into that, but I also want to talk about what you had mentioned with Shayna. Shayna, and we're talking about Shayna Alexander, our EAP lead with the Giants, is available to you, and you see that as a resource. But I actually don't believe that most people feel that that ability to approach Shayna or somebody else on our team and have it feel similarly to the way they approach our medical staff, our medical professionals. It's just it's a lot more difficult step to take. So I do think there are ways that we're going to have to make it easier, right? I don't think the onus is on the players, the athletes in sports. I think the onus is on the leadership group to create a space that where you don't feel like you're mentally weak for taking that step. And so how were you able to get over that? And so that Shayna didn't look like you were doing something that was going to make you look weak, or just generally speaking, how did you come to feel comfortable taking those steps?
Yeah, that's interesting. My mind goes two different ways, because what you mentioned with like the leadership group creating that space, I think that's like so important, because for me, I've always been kind of easily influenced by people above me or people that are just a little bit older. And so like seeing a veteran or seeing someone older or a higher position doing things that I maybe might need or might want to do only influences me to do it even more. So I think that's like super important, because like I said, at times like my old self, I would just like, one of the things I used to say was I'm such a follower, like I don't have that lead at all. So like my old self, if I would have saw older players reaching out or just promoting this side of things or talking about how sometimes they don't feel all put together, I think I would have felt more comfortable doing it before my incident. Because I think what changed for me was just my breaking point. Unfortunately, going down the road where I went and attempting suicide, I just didn't have anything else to lose. Like I came out of my experience, and I just reached like the end of the road with depression and dark thoughts and all these things where I didn't have anything to lose, where I got to the point where I didn't care what someone thought of me. And I just was like, you know what? Like to my brother, who I like totally intimidated by at times, like really tough guy. Like, hey man, I love you to death. Like I care about you so much. Like grabbing him and like giving him a hug for the first time in our lives afterwards. Just like finally not caring what people thought and knowing that I just needed help, and I wasn't afraid to say I don't have it all figured out all the time, because that's something that I try to put on the front so much with, was I'm just carrying this weight around of acting like, yeah, I'm successful. I've created, or I've reached my goals, and I got it all figured out. And really inside, I was like totally lost and just kind of like impersonating a bunch of people. So I just feel like I was carrying such a weight around that I eventually got to a really dark place. But then afterwards, I just didn't feel like I had anything else to lose. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen if I tell someone how I'm really feeling? Like, what's the worst that can happen? So I think doing that before things get so extreme is the hard part. And I think that's the separator, right? Like that's where like this conversation is important for. All the other examples are important with, because I don't want, for me, like I know what that feels like. So I don't want anyone ever to get back to that place or ever experience anything like I felt before my incident, because I think it can be avoided. So it's not easy, because the first time doing anything, it's uncomfortable. But it's a lot easier than going through what I went through to learn the lesson, because there's so many resources and there's so many things that can help. And I think it just comes back to, like we've talked about, just like having people lead by example by doing it and talking about it and promoting it, because the more you talk about something, the more it's on other people's minds. So I know, like I mentioned earlier, I think I always heard people talk about it, but maybe if it just like was just constantly in my face, maybe I would have just been like, you know what? All right, fine. Screw this. What else? Like, what's the worst that can happen? Let me go ask for help, or let me go tell someone how I'm really feeling for once, instead of acting like I got it all figured out.
Yeah. And I wonder if you can get to that place of like the lack of give a shit, where like, what do I have to lose? I can go ahead and share what's really going on in my brain, because you already gotten to this space. I mean, you attempted to take your own life, right? You shot yourself. So is there a way to get that removal of like, I have nothing else to lose? Is that just a pipe dream? You have to like go through something traumatic like you went through?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just like everything else, just finding the sweet spot in between, like trying so hard and being complacent. Like, I think that's something that I do. Like I go through so many different phases where at one point, like at any given day, I don't know, I feel like I've put together like a lot of good days and have my routines all solid, and I'm getting the most out of myself each day. So I feel like I've kind of got it figured out. So I'm on the end of the spectrum where I'm maybe a little too, I don't know, big headed, but then sometimes I feel like a little lost, and then I feel like I'm just kind of like all over the place, and find that sweet spot of thinking that like it's basically just being present. And I think, I don't know, finding that balance of being confident but not cocky, and then being humble but not complacent or like a pushover with yourself, to know that putting yourself first at any given time isn't a selfish thing. I think that's something that, I mean, for me at least, that was like one of my biggest challenges. Anytime I was like such a people pleaser that anytime I did anything small for myself, I would go home and just be like, dude, are you kidding me? Like, how can you do that for yourself? Like, or I wouldn't say it like that, but I would just think I was being selfish. And I think that's a lack of self-confidence. But I don't know. I think it's just getting back to a place of, not getting back to, but like leading people to feel comfortable in their own skin, and knowing that not giving a shit at times is okay, but also trying too hard sometimes isn't going to help either. The more you press, the more you resist, or the more you push things, sometimes that makes it harder to happen.
So I want to switch gears. I kind of listen to you talk through things, and anything you don't want to talk about, please just say it. Are there any medications that have been especially effective for you? And are there medications that you have tried at this stage in your life that you wish you would have tried during your playing career?
Yeah, it's interesting, because I'm still going through the process of trying to figure out the right combination for me. Immediately after my incident, immediately after I was on a bunch of things, because I was also dealing with physical discomfort too. So I think the combination of things just wasn't right. But I was insanely irritable, and I had some negative side effects. So I've gone through the process, because it also takes a couple like antidepressants and mood stabilizers and things, sometimes they take weeks to take the full effect. So you have to kind of go through the trial and error process of trying them and seeing how you respond, and then waiting for them to kick in. And if it doesn't really feel right, or if it's not the right fit, you also have to go through like a detoxing, or not detoxing, but like a washout phase for a couple of weeks. So it's kind of a long process, but there was definitely some that I thought might, I actually was on a low dosage antidepressant in the off season between 2017 and 18. After my first year in the big leagues, I knew I wasn't right. And I felt like who knows, like I've heard of things, so maybe something might help. So sometimes they kind of like numb you out too, where it's like, you don't really feel the negative emotions that you're trying to get rid of, but also it numbs you out to like the positive emotions too, of like, you don't feel as much pleasure with succeeding, or you don't feel as much whatever. So sometimes they numb you out in both aspects. So I just recently started a new one, but I've gone through maybe 4 different ones since my incident last year. And it seems like, I don't know, it seems like some of them, again, kind of either make me irritable or too numb to emotions. And it's like, sometimes, I don't know, sometimes when I notice I'm not feeling as anxious or sped up or irritable, but I'm also not enjoying things that I used to enjoy before. So it's like, what give and take am I willing to sacrifice to go through to feel better, just to feel better overall. So it's tough. And I don't know if any of the ones that I've tried, I would like to, looking back, I don't think I would have gained much from them before my incident, because I was also at the same time, before my incident, I was kind of like, I was part of the stigma, right? I thought I looked at mental health as a weakness. So in turn, I also looked at like medication as a weakness. So like when I was on that medication between 17 and 18, although I was taking it, I was like feeling lesser about myself because I was taking it. So it's interesting because you have to kind of have a really open mind to it, which I think I have that now, especially towards medication. But beforehand, I was taking these things knowing that, or thinking that I might come off as weak, or might come off as like a little crazy to someone if they found out that I was taking it.
Yeah. I mean, this brings me back to the idealistic training room scenario where, look, I mean, you go in with that stiff neck or that sore hamstring, and there's probably an anti-inflammatory prescribed that day, right? Like it's Celebrex, or maybe it's just something like Advil that a player takes to get ready for the game that day. And I'm just wondering if that is like a possibility at some point for a guy that's dealing with a high level of anxiety, panic attacks, depression. And I'm talking about people here, but we're talking about baseball players. And if that's actually a possibility at some point. And then, one other thing that I wanted to dig in with you on as well is, kind of helping me be a better manager. So I have never seen you, as long as I've known you, from afar, up close and personal in the clubhouse, on the field, since you've been working on this side with us, irritable. Not one time. Like I've never seen you as like moody in any way. Like you've always had that big smile on your face, and you carry that energy around with you. But so from my perspective, as I look out into our clubhouse, how am I going to know? Like, how do I get to that place with players where, you kind of see the limp, right? You see the person struggling and wrestling with something. If you, of all people, always comes off as, in a really good spot. I mean, help me understand that a little bit better.
Yeah, that's it's really tough, because that is like my biggest, I would say, challenge that I still deal with. Because I like my old self would beat myself up for saying this, but I think it's kind of a good trait that at times I'm able to put it aside and then maybe deal with it later. Like back in the day, or before my incident, I used to just put it away and never address it. But now I think I'm able to, if I'm feeling a certain way and I feel like it's maybe not the right time, or if I don't feel comfortable with whatever, I can maybe put it to the side and still like let people feel comfortable around me or enjoy the moment, whatever give them a laugh, and then go home and assess it in a more healthy way. But yeah, that is a tough thing, because it's like, while it's something that, I don't know, it's also like the environment too. Like, most of the time, especially now, since I'm not playing as much, or not playing at all, being in that environment is like one of the most comfortable environments for me. So when I'm around you at the field and whatnot, it's like, it just naturally brings out the best version of myself. The irritability and like my mood swings of things come out more so like in regular life, like at home, and when like some kind of adversity hits or whatever it may be. But it's to like see the limp, like you say. I think it's something that, again, it's so new that it's players and people are still getting comfortable with the idea of like voicing it and like showing it, because we don't want to put that on someone else. So like, I think the stigma is you don't want to be an inconvenience to others. You don't want to put your problem on someone else. So if someone is going through something, they come into the clubhouse and you can't tell. I think a couple of things is like, one, they're in their natural environment, so they just naturally feel a little bit better. It might boost their spirits a little bit. And two, they might not feel comfortable doing it, but it's something that we're just seeing it more happen more often, where players and other athletes and other sports everywhere are just starting to talk about it a little bit more. So I think it's something that is just in the growing process, and it's something that, I don't know, in a couple of years or maybe down the road, players will start feeling more comfortable, because it's a normal thing and people are talking about it more. So, and it's one of those things too, is like, at least for me, you always, at the beginning of the year, every manager says, I got the open door policy. I'm talking whenever, like, everyone hears, yeah, that sounds good, but like nobody actually does it. And I think that's something, it's changing. And I think you're doing a great job of doing that, because just being kind of like a fly on the wall at times when I came to see or visit the team, I feel like that was happening. But like I said, I just think it's new. So people are a little like hesitant because they're trying to feel it out. And it's just this part of the game, or part of life that people try to hide for so long, that getting it out in the open is a little scary at first, but people are just kind of starting to creep into it and realize that it's actually really healing, and it's actually helps you bring out the best version of yourself by doing that. So I don't know. I guess I just rambled. I didn't really have like an exact answer, but it's just new, and it's something that people are doing, but it's just happening a little bit slower because there's a stigma that needs to be broken first.
Yeah, I'm just feeling a little bit impatient with it. I mean, I think we did a nice job with it this year. I thought the mental health awareness T-shirts got a lot of good play, and I think, look, just the fact that players were willing to wear that T-shirt, and I don't think they were doing it as a chore. Like, look, I can visualize several of our players that I think really believe that this is something that we need to address. So this being important to players is everything. And then there are fans out there, not just in the city of San Francisco, but across the nation, that you have touched, that are seeing these T-shirts and seeing you speak and hearing your story, that now feel more comfortable letting their guard down, right? That mental toughness that we talked about, the true mental toughness is being willing to address it and address it head on. So I've always thought about a player that steps into the batter's box and things come very easily to that player. So they just always are composed in the batter's box and always making good decisions, don't have 1,000 thoughts like flooding into their mind. We think of that player as mentally tough, but really what that player is probably mentally blessed and not actually tough. Toughness comes from actually having all of those thoughts pouring through your brain when you walk into the clubhouse, having, quite a bit of insecurity perhaps, or maybe it's like, whatever, you're depressed and you have to like bring good energy to the clubhouse. For me, that's more toughness than like it just coming naturally and easy to you. So that's why I kind of think about you, all of the things that you've had to face, and being able to, make incremental changes, have some like nearly catastrophic events or directly catastrophic events that have changed your paradigm and the way you think. but you have had to overcome so much, and that's true mental toughness. So if people from the outside are, looking at our players and now they feel a little bit more equipped to handle some of the challenges that they're dealing with because our players are open about it. Yeah, I mean, I think at that point we are doing exactly that. We are encouraging mental toughness and mental resilience to some degree. Yeah. So this is a bit of a gear shift, but it's something that I've been thinking about a lot. When you look in the mirror now, you actually look in the mirror and you see yourself physically. You see your eye, you see the damage that has happened. What do you see? What do you think? And is it different every day?
Man, yeah, that's a really great question, because it definitely changes every day. I still go through some serious phases where I'm really hard on myself, and it's like sometimes I look at my eye when I'm going through maybe a quick little depression phase, or I hate saying quick little because sometimes they're serious, but sometimes I look at it and I just feel shame and guilt. Like, how could you? I just cannot believe that you did that. Like, are you serious? And then sometimes I look at it like I'm the best looking guy in the world. Like sometimes I see, like, I'm just so,
that's cool.
I feel so grateful because like the doctors, like physically, they did an amazing job of putting me back together in a way that I just look normal. It's just my eyes closed. So it's like, sometimes like I said, I think it changes so often, but for the most part, more days than the others, the times I look at my eye, I'm just completely amazed because, like I said, I have pictures of what I looked like the night of and the days after and stuff. And to think that I was able to come out with symmetry and the scarring healed very similar to the rest of my skin, like you can barely see it. More days than not, I'm just like insanely grateful when I look at it because it could have been so much worse.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. And I think a lot of people will relate to, yeah, some days I'm, I don't love what I see, and other days I do love what I see. That's just people. That's what people do, right? Like every day you feel, so that just makes you like everyone else. Now your story and, what you've actually gone through makes you incredibly unique. And I mean, I think there are people who are just really going to benefit from hearing you talk through that experience.
Yeah. I think that's what it did. Like it brought out the relatability side of me. Like I think I've said it as like just the power of relatability with this is like the goal of just like everyone is going through something, and like the specific trigger or whatever is making them feel that way is totally different from each person, but all the emotions and things that we feel are the same within each person. It's like everyone has felt what anxiety feels like. So feeling it for me from baseball or calling off a wedding and feeling lesser about myself because I was feeling anxiety, like the specific trigger is way different, but the same feeling is happening with me as it is a person sitting next to me at any given time. So we've all kind of experienced that. And it's just like talking about it and voicing it is the separator of creating that comfort zone of someone to feel able to talk about it because they're relatable and they're like, wow, I actually have felt that way at certain points. So maybe I'm not as weak or off as it usually feels when I'm feeling those things all by myself.
Yeah. Because like being a man in sports is so much about like how tough you are perceived to be. I think it's really important that we're talking about this because I think it just gives us a little bit of an edge, right? Like a guy who is as physically gifted as you are with your speed and your overall athleticism, to know that you've got this thing that you deal with. For somebody who isn't as physically gifted, maybe they don't feel like a lack of masculinity, right? Because you're able to show that. I'm not articulating my thought well here. I think what it is I think men are always concerned with losing perceived masculinity, right? Yeah. And so I think that there is a portion of the population that looks at men who talk about shit that they're dealing with, mental health issues, and say, oh, like that, to your point, that is a weakness. And I think that really holds us back. But I think sports is kind of cool. Like if you take a UFC fighter or a football player or a very physical baseball player, you can't help but know that person has some degree of masculinity, right? And I think that allows us to like take away some of the stigma, right? Like men in sports, to take away some of the stigma, because you can still like be masculine and strong and also have this part of you that is a little compromised, right?
Yeah. I think I see what you're saying now. It's like the compartmentalizing side of it, where it's like you can be this beast on the field and just like bring out all the adrenaline and everything, but you can also go home and be like a loving husband and a loving father, and like set an example of how to feel good about yourself in life and just any regular situation, but also be able to flip that switch and go into Hulk mode and be able to bring out all the traits of a really masculine man. And it's like having that separator in environments, but also like knowing that that's all one big package of like, that is what masculinity is. And being a really good example is having both sides of it, because it's in different environments, it brings out different sides of you, but at the same time, being able to address and assess things in a way that's healthy is the goal. And that's where that's where everyone would like to be. And that's what we're all like working for and trying to be, because everyone can say that they just want to be the best, bring out the best of themselves and be the best version of themselves. And at times that's in a baseball game. It was when I was trying to just be a beast and trying to knock the cover off the ball and run as fast as I can. And then when I come home, I felt like I was lacking, but I was trying to be the best partner to Diana. And it's like, because it's separate situations, but at the same time, it's all one overall picture of being just a really good human being.
Yeah. And I think that overall picture, and I think this is a really good segue into parenting, is you have to be able to expose that part of you if your children are around. Like I have two boys. I have a 22-year-old and one that's about to be 20 years old. And so, you know, if they're growing up in the same house and they see this very physical thing that's happening all the time, a baseball player that is constantly on the move and like just very physical, you want to show them every side of you, right? You want to expose some of the parts of you that are you know, maybe compromised a little bit, because they're going to be feeling compromised at times in their life. And we don't want them feeling like there's something wrong with them. You know, they're teenagers and going through some shit and they're feeling like the world is a dark place. They want to know that their father has experienced that at times as well. And that, you know, maybe their father was able to get through it. Maybe you're somebody's father, Drew, and you're able to get through those dark times. And is there a better example than that, than being able to be both of those things and all of those things?
No, I think that's great, because it's also like, it just made me think of just also exposing all those sides, but also comprehending it enough to where you can communicate it. And I think that's the separator too, like actually talking about it, because for two reasons. When you don't talk about it, you just kind of like justify all these thoughts that feel overwhelming in your head because you're just holding it in. But then two, I think when you do voice things, it forces you to get a better understanding of it, which in turn helps you understand and reflect even deeper why, and understand why you're feeling that way. So for me, the more I talk about things, the more I understand why I'm feeling that way, and why the next time when I start feeling something sooner, I'm able to articulate it and explain it better. And I think that, like I said, I think the two keys is showing that side and feeling comfortable enough to like show that a really tough guy or masculine man like us are able to show all sides of us, and then also able to explain and talk about why maybe sometimes it's not all great, and it's not all flowers and rainbows or whatever you want to call it. But because, like I said, the more I don't know the quote exactly, but it's like you can't be an expert in something without being able to explain it. So it's like voicing it and saying it out loud forces you to get a clearer and more articulate understanding of whatever you're feeling inside.
Yeah, I think it's saying it out loud. I don't know if you've ever practiced this at all, but I know you've experimented a little bit with writing. So has that also led to a better understanding and a better ability to articulate your thoughts in person with players and with other people?
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, I journaled every day for almost a year straight. I haven't been doing it as often, but journaling, reading more, and something that it's one of those things I always heard was just naturally reading and writing and things just automatically increases your, I don't know, your vocabulary, one, but then two, being able to like say things clearer. And that's something that's interesting because that was one of my biggest insecurities before my incident, was just speaking in general, because I had such a huge insecurity of just overall intelligence. So like anytime I needed to say anything other than like movie quotes or just like talking about girls or whatever, I was just like, I was so closed off from it. So now being in a position where like, it's kind of like my job almost to talk about things is crazy to think about. But I think it comes back from, like you mentioned, like talking or writing things down, reflecting things deeper than just like impulsivity. It just helps. And it's something that I think it only it'll increase your understanding of whatever you're dealing with.
Okay. That all makes good sense to me. I've been thinking a little bit, now that we've talked a lot about the mental side, I just want to hear about where you are in your physical progression and performance. I know for a long time, getting ready for the 2021 season, you had, established some personal bests in the deadlift. And I just wanted to hear where you are. How are your workouts coming? Especially since we saw you, walking around Oracle Park, and you're looking pretty healthy and strong, and like you could still play. So how's that going?
Yeah, it's going great. It's interesting because I've totally bought into physical work for the mental gains.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Good call.
Like my 18-year-old self was just trying to have the sickest six pack I could get, the biggest bike. And it's like, now that I basically have those things, it's like I don't care about them as much as I would have back then, because I'm really working out because it's great for me. Like I know the health benefits. It like gets all my endorphins firing. It gets everything going, all of the feel good emotions firing my body. And then it's also just like a pride thing. I just feel really good about myself. So yeah, I still work out. I do 4 days on, 1 day off. Still lift heavy stuff. Did like a 12-mile run 2 days ago.
Wow.
So I've been getting after it, and it's something that I have totally bought into for the physical or for the mental gain, more so for the physical. But I'm not gonna lie, the physical side of it is fun to look at sometimes too. But yeah, it was pretty interesting. It was pretty funny because the last week in Sacramento, I had announced I was going to be retiring like 10 days before. So obviously everybody knew. And Dwayne was like, because I had been keeping up pretty well with the daily workouts. And so he was like, he knew I was in shape to do things. And he's like, you want to just have a max out tour? So for the last week in Sacramento, I went in each day and just lifted as much as I could with each lift. And I was able to get up to like 620 with the deadlift. So it was like,
wow.
Really fun to see that.
Wow. That's super cool. I actually, I really buy into what you're saying about kind of the physical strength, the confidence you get in your lifts and in your runs and in various kinds of like physical activity can lead to a more stable mental health outlook. So that resonates really strongly with me. Certainly one of the reasons that, I've tried to maintain some consistency, over my entire adult life, because I think it does, stabilize things for me, keeps me even and calm. So that's super cool. And then one other question related, as you train now and as you hit that 620 deadlift, was there any thought of like, oh, now my body feels even better, I can come back and play? Like how often is that popping into your brain, if at all?
Yeah, daily.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's definitely a daily thing, because I lift heavy, but I still try to do like a lot of athletic movements. So like, because I don't want to just like turn into like a big old slow moving person. So I like still do athletic things. So it's like I'll do a couple of things and it's like, dang, my body feels great. And it's funny because it's like, yeah, of course it feels great, because you're not doing this and then also going and doing all the baseball work on top of it. So like, I just kind of remind myself, definitely don't do it in like think of it in like a regretful way, like, oh, I should have just stuck it out. But yeah, I would say daily I think about like, I'm in the best shape of my life. I could still do it right now. So it's definitely funny.
I'm sure that's going to come in and out for you for the foreseeable future, because you're still so young, you know? So that means your body's going to be responding well, you're going to be recovering well. And, you know, every once in a while you're going to pick up a bat. We know that's going to happen, and you're going to feel it in your hands, and you're going to probably have that itch. So I think that's just part of it. And it's probably part of your personal journey.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely something that's comforting too, because in the back of my mind, I think I still have it, but also it's one of the things where I still have peace of knowing that it was my time to retire. Because that was something I was totally afraid of. Like, going into the announcement was like, I was terrified I was going to come home and be home for a week and be like, man, what the hell did I do? Why did I decide that? So it's nice to have that thought in the back of my head, thinking that's just like, just the one aspect, like I still have it physically, but I also still have that peace of knowing that it was the right call and it was the right decision.
Yeah, I love that piece. I'm glad you have it, and hopefully it turns into more of a playful conversation, and so you don't feel like that attachment or that pull or that draw. Although I imagine at times, you know, you will going forward. I certainly did, and I mean, every now and again I pick up a bat and like, that just feels really good. And then I remind myself how bad I was at the end of my career. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. You weren't very good. So
that's exactly what I do. I think I'll every once in a while, just that number of like 115 will flash in my brain.
Yeah.
This year, I'm like, okay, well, it feels good, but it didn't look good. So that's later.
No, I love that. I think that's how it's supposed to be, is just like, you know, honest with yourself, but, you know, going easy on yourself also. And this is a really enjoyable conversation for me, Drew, but I don't want to stop without, you know, hearing if there's anything else that you wanted to touch on, anything else that you think we should talk about. And by the way, like, this doesn't have to be our last conversation about this stuff. I would love to be able to, you know, maybe even do a series of these.
Yeah, no, yeah, man. I love this stuff, and I just love, like, I don't know, just letting it all out. It's very like soothing and very healing. So I don't know. I don't think nothing really comes to mind other than since we kind of transitioned to talking about workouts, hearing the story of you just walking into spring training complex in the morning in your jeans and just lifting up whoever was lifting the 400-pound deadlift. Is that a true story?
So it's interesting. You know, obviously get made fun of by teammates and people that I work with about this, but I actually like training, strength training, traditional compound lifts in jeans and boots. I don't know what it is. It's like, it kind of just feels almost like a weightlifting belt. You know how like a weightlifting belt kind of makes you feel a little bit snug. So, yeah. You know, if I'm in like Lulu gear or athletic shorts, I probably feel a little bit more freedom, but I don't feel that tightness I really like. And then the boots, they have a flat sole, right? And it's kind of stiff. So I prefer when I squat, deadlift, overhead press, those kind of lifts, that's what I go in with. So it is a true story that in camp, and from time to time, I'll be in the weight room. I try to go when nobody else is in there, but every once in a while, you're in there with other dudes. And I mean, I don't care all that much. So go in there with jeans and boots on and do my thing, and then get made fun of for it, which I also like.
Yeah, no, I love that. And then, I guess, I don't know how much time you have, but the next thought that came to mind was like, and it's something that I had like wrote down or planned to ask you before we started the conversation, but like, what have you always been into, or what, I guess, was there like one specific thing that kind of switched, like brought up in your like everyday, where you really bought into like the mental side of of life and the game? Because I feel like you're just like so much more advanced in these things, like with your, like how articulate you are when you talk about these things. And is that something that you've always kind of bought into, or is this something that happened, or is there just like overall progression of it?
So, I mean, I'll be frank, like your story, the experience of what you went through has been a pretty big inspiration to me. But so the thought that I shared earlier about what is mental strength, is a hitter mentally tough if he just steps into the batter's box and nothing's going through his brain? That's something that's been marinating for me since I was in the minor leagues. And I would look at hitters who just seem to just go up there, see ball, hit ball, and they don't even remember what pitch they hit. They come back in the dugout, like, what pitch you hit? What pitch did you hit? Like, I don't know. Like, how do you not know? So basically, it's just like a lot of emptiness. And I think the perception of those players has always been like that, that dude is like really mentally tough. But I never thought about it that way. I always thought about the dudes that had that were struggling with a lot of things, but then could still go up and perform and still, go into the clubhouse and not drag the clubhouse down. Like I think of that as mental toughness. So I've always thought about that. And then the second thing that I've thought about for a really long time is how difficult it is for men in sports to always have to put on that front of like, nothing's wrong, everything's good. How are you? I'm great. Are you really great? Like, yeah. And like, you're not going to be great every day. So just the ability for people to answer that question honestly in the clubhouse. How are you? Kind of shitty today, actually. Like, I had to take my dog to the vet. That kind of sucked. Like, the ability to be honest about things that are happening in your life. Because when you ask somebody how they're feeling physically, they're pretty comfortable saying, my shoulder's a little bit stiff. And it's just, and it puts people in a tough spot. Like, they can't be themselves. And I also think, how I feel about our platforms, Drew. You were a major league player. You're a professional player. That means people are going to listen. They're going to listen to what you have to say. I'm in a position, luckily, where people, when I say something, people are willing to be open and listen, both inside our clubhouse, but then also externally. I think that means that we have a responsibility. And that responsibility is to use our platform to like make an impact in society here in San Francisco, here in the city and in the Bay, but also as far reaching as that can possibly be. And in order to we have to build our platforms, whether that be as a major league manager, whether it be as a president of baseball operations, whether it be as a player, or whether it be as somebody in your position who has experienced, really the edge, like the absolute edge, and then being able to share your experiences with others. Because everybody, you've mentioned this in our conversations, everybody's looking for somebody to relate to. So I just think we have the responsibility to use our platforms to say things. Mental health is something that I feel like through talking to a lot of players, I've gotten to understand a whole lot better. To be honest with you, I don't struggle with depression. I don't struggle with anxiety. I don't have panic attacks, but I know a lot of people who are dealing with those issues. And I don't think you have to be like wrestling with those things to be an advocate for people who are wrestling with those things. So those are things that I've been thinking about for a really long time. I hope the things that I do deal with, there's some other like advocate for me at some point. So do you see what I'm saying? So basically, How do we use these platforms that we've been, that we've built, but also that we're kind of, blessed with, how do we use these to make a difference in our society and in our cities? So that's a long-winded way of answering that question, but I hope it gives you some clarity.
No, I love it. It's beautiful. It's because that's the goal, right? Like, especially like you said, if someone for you that doesn't necessarily go acutely experience those things, but still having the understanding is the goal. And I think during your answer, it brought up the idea of also there's another side of these things too, of where there's somebody that's going to be receiving the news from someone that they're not doing great, and having them be in a position where they're comfortable enough to help that person or hear that person or just listen. So like I said, it just kind of reminded me that there's like the other side of it where because your example was someone talks about their sore arm, whatever, but if they come in and say, hey, I'm not doing that well. I had to take my dog to the vet today. That person is going to be hearing that. The stigma for them is usually like, oh, that's weird. Like he really just threw that on me. But it's like being able to receive those things and be either strong enough or be able to assess them or just kind of like listen to the person without judgment and like make them feel comfortable is the goal. So like I said, I think the one part of our conversation is just promoting talking and having people feel confident enough and comfortable enough to voice what's going on inside them, but also the other side of someone hearing those things from somebody and being confident and comfortable enough to talk about those things with them and be a non-judgmental person in their life. So like I said, that just kind of came up during your answer, but I think what you said was just so beautiful because there were so many different things that touched on what people are dealing with. And again, like the power relatability of what we're going for is just a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, I appreciate hearing that. I think that, one competitive benefit from creating that environment where people are actually talking about, like actually answering that question honestly, like, how are you? It's amazing how people step up and support to help that person get to a better place so they can compete better. Right? Like there's the part of this that's just, hey, this is the right thing to do in the world. And then there's the competitive part of this, which is like, how do we get a better athlete out of this person? How do we get a better performance tonight out of this person? So if you're like, oh man, I just had, a death in the family, and all of a sudden people surround you with support. We know you're playing tonight, like you had a death in the family, and you're thinking about that, but maybe you're playing tonight. How do we help you go out there and be really good? How do we go out there and help you channel that experience that you had? How do we help you go out there and play for that family member or that pet? Like the little tricks and tools we use to help you be just marginally better on the court, the baseball field, wherever it is that you're competing. It's a big deal. It's a big deal competitively. And then, like I said, it's just quite frankly the right thing to do for another human being is to surround that person with some support and some strength.
Yeah, no, I mean, 100% agree. There's so many things that go into it, and it's again, just being a really good person, but also it's in turn, it's going to bring out the best version of you as a person and a competitor. So it comes back to all the same things of like 1% better each day. How can you get 1% better? If that's something as simple as just getting an extra 30 minutes of sleep, it's going to bring out a better version of yourself. So, and it's something that, I don't know, for me, it speaks like the character, like people giving and offering support just shows your character. And it's something that is totally contagious. So if I wasn't as open to this and I see Buster Posey and I see all these leaders sitting there and supporting someone going through some hard time, it's gonna feed into me, and it's gonna like set the example and show me how to do it. And then the next time someone else is going through something, maybe I'm the person that goes over and shows support. So it's totally contagious, and it's something that, like you said, leads to a lot of competitive advantages.
Yeah, no, I think that's very well said. And, it's interesting. It coincides nicely with the message on your t-shirt, right? Keep showing up. Yeah. You keep showing up, you keep having conversations, you keep trying to build this environment, and that's going to give you, your best chance to make an impact.
100%.